everyone. You can't have courage without community. And so we're excited to welcome the kickoff of the 2023 Community Commons Change Makers. It's women coming together to affect big change. And we're hoping to create a space for a monthly connection and conversation where we can bring courage forward and speeding up the change that we need. And I was just reading a couple things. The UN says that full gender equity could take close to 300 years on the current rate of progress. 132 years to reach pay gap parity. Is that okay? So I guess where I tend to go as a woman and a human being is to look at how do we speed up the change that is necessary to accomplish big things. And while climate is certainly underlying this, this is not necessarily the topic that we're going to be talking about always. However, those two facts layered over the issue of climate change that Allie knows well, and some other folks too. Stephanie works in solar. It's going to cause complications. And so I believe in my heart, and I think what has served me throughout my life is that it's easier to create change if you're in community, that you're connected to other people, that you see the other person, and you're more willing to make that change within your own life. So that's a little bit about why we're here. And I'm just going to go back to repeating what I said off the top. Simon Sinek, in a podcast that I just listened to, said, you can't have courage without community. And he was talking to a space archaeologist. How fascinating. There actually is a title that NASA created a whole area to look at that. And so they look at archaeology from space on down and discover things. And he asked the space archaeologist a question and said, now looking at all these old civilizations, what do you take away? What's the one thing? And she said, the only way is love. The only way is love. So we're here to share love and courage and community and surround Keerthana, who I don't even see yet. She must have lost her signal or something. But before we throw it over to her anyway, I wanted you to introduce yourselves. And the question that I wanted to pose for us to think about is, what would you tell your 20-year-old self about courage and making change? Like if you were to go back. And so Liz, do you want to start with that? Introduce yourself, where you're coming from, what you do, a little bit about you, and share that.
Sure, absolutely. My name is Liz Kaplan. Right now, I'm the Senior Director of Development. I handle all the philanthropic fundraising for the University of Arizona College of Medicine, Phoenix, the medical school in Phoenix, Arizona. But I've been involved in some sort of nonprofit work for 30 years. So either as a volunteer or as a staff person or board member or something else. If I was going to tell my 20-year-old self, I mean, I was really, really active in college, and I thought I was going to save the world. And I would say to myself, keep going. Don't let other people get you down. And I think I listened to too many people in my life that were not as excited about as what I was doing. And so I would go back and say, just keep doing it. Just, and that's a lot of maturity and self-awareness, and but that's what I would do. So
great. Allie, why don't you jump in?
Yep, my name is Allie Bean. I live in Moscow, Idaho. I work with the Idaho Conservation League. Our office is based in Boise. I'm the climate change campaign coordinator, graduate of the University of Idaho in the geography department with my doctorate there. Did a short stint with NASA and a postdoc with USDA, all related to how we can work to mitigate climate change and adapt to our changing climate. I love this question, actually, because I was just thinking about this last night. I watched a keynote address from, and I don't know her actual name, but she played Phoebe in Friends. And she told a story that she was working for a different show and she got fired. I can't remember which one. And she was so disappointed that she got fired and things didn't work out. She really got down. But as a result of having failed in one capacity, it opened up all of these new doors and she was able to apply for the position to be on Friends. So I think what I would have told my 20-year-old self is don't be afraid of failure, because it's actually the failings that open up new doors for us to find avenues that we maybe wouldn't have been exposed to before. So
who knew two mentions of NASA in the first
right?
conversation?
Yeah. Very cool.
That's great, Allie. Okay, Stephanie.
I'm Stephanie. It's nice to see you all. I'm based in Raleigh, North Carolina, but I work for a community solar company based in Maryland. And if you haven't heard about community solar, it's also known as shared solar. And it's essentially a subscription service that connects local residents and businesses with solar farms in their area so that they can get the discounted clean energy to power their home without installing their own equipment. So there are no like homeowner requirements and things like that. My own personal path before that was not really focused on the clean energy sector. I'm an environmental communicator, both at heart and in practice. And so my focus was really more on greenwashing, corporate sustainability, and corporate culture, things like that. So I'm very involved in the B Corp world, and the company that I work for is a certified B Corp as well. I am in my 20s, but one thing that I've been told since I've been in the workforce is kind of just that I need to be okay with things being good enough at some point, just because there are constantly things you need to be pushing out, and I just want to meet those very high standards, but at a certain point it's like you got to just put things out. And I just kind of want to push back against that and say it's okay to want things to be better than good enough, and that's how you make change. So I would I want to stick to that path, and think that good enough may not be what we're really after when we're looking to thrive, and that it's good to keep asking questions that might hit sore spots, because that usually means that you're onto something.
Katie, do you want to introduce yourself?
My name is Katie Davis, and I work for the Forest Park Conservancy based in Portland, Oregon. And I was invited by Renee Myers, who I think met with you, Rhonda. So that's how I learned about this group. And I support fundraising through corporate partners and also communications efforts of our organization. So yeah, thank you for having me. It's my first time joining.
Wendy, nice to see you.
You as well. Nice to see you, Rhonda.
Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us what you would tell your 20-year-old self?
Oh, that's such a good question. I'm well beyond, not unlike Stephanie and some others. I am in my 50s, so I have a lot of lived experience as some of us do. So I live in San Jose, California. I work for Apple. I've been here for about 18 years. I spent the first 14 of those years in the education division, which was pure joy to be around such incredible people in marketing. So Apple products to educators, to students, to faculty, to schools, et cetera. And also just meeting a bunch of really kick-ass educators who really blended technology with figuring out how kids learn and giving them their choices and how they want to learn and stuff like that. This is when the iPad was just coming out, et cetera. And so that was just the people is what I'm trying to get at, is what I really love there. And now I made a switch over to retail marketing. I'm a creative producer here. So I work on the sessions. If you go into the store and take a session on iPad about how to draw with Procreate or whatever, my team delivers those sessions. So I help creatively produce those, which is super fun, again, around lots of creative people. I love working at Apple. It has been a great company to work for. So it's funny that you say, Stephanie, about not good enough, because it's never good enough here. And we're constantly coming up against deadlines. to perfect the work. So I hear it's a common refrain from our creative team. So it sounds like you might fit in very well at Apple if you want to switch careers. And what I would tell my 20-year-old self, I had the great pleasure of listening to Lisa Jackson, who is a VP here at Apple. And she used to be Obama's lead for the EPA. And so she's an amazing, amazing person. And she runs sustainability, accessibility, community outreach, et cetera. So she had Brian Stevenson come and speak. And for those of you who don't know him, he's an incredible activist in his community in the South. And he talked about the word he kept saying over and over again is get proximate. So I didn't volunteer a lot as a 20-year-old. I was just kind of trying to find my way in LA at the time. And I would say volunteer more and get proximate, which means going to the places where you want to get help, because then you really understand what the problems are by being close to the people that are experiencing the challenges you want to try and help fix. So that's what I would say.
Wow, interesting. I'm gonna have to.
What about if you're a remote worker?
Yeah, if you're a remote worker, that's interesting. I would say try and find a way into those meetings remotely. That's a really good question. And I'm listening to this. I'm watching the Meghan Markle and sorry to go off topic. It's slightly on topic. Watching the documentary about Harry and Meghan, and really looking at her as a young woman and what she was really interested in. And she's always sort of been very passionate about causes and stuff. And she would literally travel to these places. So you don't have to just get proximate with the United States. Travel if you are interested in going overseas and find a way to make that happen. My younger self would have been like, I can't do that. That's too much. And some people just say, I'm just doing that. So I would say to my younger self, be strong, be brave, and figure out where you want to go help.
Great advice. And yes, but as a mom, I'm sitting here with my daughter in Thailand and my son now in Brooklyn going, I miss them. Anyway, it's all good stuff. Keerthana, let's throw it over to Keerthana and let her introduce herself and just kind of share some thoughts that she's prepared for us today to think about.
Thank you so much. And thank you all for your insight. It was really nice hearing about your guys' backgrounds and your sort of experience. So hi, my name is Keerthana. I'm a freshman at Arizona State University. I'm currently studying economics with a minor in French, and I hope to attend law school after graduation because I kind of want to pursue a career in advocacy. But outside of school, I'm super passionate about sustainability, climate work, as well as fashion. I recently got into modeling and fashion designing, and I just absolutely love it. And I love the creative intersection, like you were talking about at Apple, and how even though they're completely unrelated fields when you first look at it, the sort of creative thinking and those cognitive skills that come with it, I think are super important, and they apply to every field. So yeah, that's basically me. I am also an Asian American. My parents immigrated to the US in 2001 to get better opportunities for me and my sister. And so I kind of grew up in the US. I was born here, but I also still have those like the cultural influences from my family as I speak another language as well. So today I kind of wanted to share with you guys my youth perspective as far as women in the corporate industry and all of the other industries in general, and kind of how we can be more inclusive to youth voices to get them more involved. So to start, I would say the biggest thing is opening up more mentorship and internship programs, because a lot of kids, especially me, are extremely willing and open to learning, even if it's something in a field that they're not necessarily pursuing in school or doing outside of school. Because like I said earlier, I have a lot of diverse interests. So when it comes to finding like an on-campus job or finding an internship, sometimes I feel kind of lost because I'm asking myself, do I want to do something in a field that I've already done, or do I want to explore a new field and try something new? Because as most of you probably remember, when you guys were in college, like that first few years were the start of your journey. It was the start of the rest of your life, I would say, like as far as how you would consider it. You're still exploring, you're finding things that you like, you're finding things you don't. And honestly, career-wise, I don't know what I want to do. Like I have interests, but as far as my dream job, whenever people ask me a question, I just give them a blank stare because I honestly have no idea. So that's kind of what I'm trying to figure out right now. So I think opening up these mentorship programs and things like that is super, super important. Having someone to ask about these questions, having someone in different industries and getting their experience, I think is super important. That's kind of what I've been trying to do, but it's also a little hard as I am just starting out in college because um, I know a lot of people get internships and all that stuff, but like I'm still struggling because I just started. So I'm still trying to figure out ways to meet people and to talk to people and kind of show them how open I am to learning. Because like I said earlier, even if it's in a different field, like I'm I love learning. I love trying new things and I love expanding my knowledge and skill set. And that's definitely something that I think making that clearer could be extremely important. Additionally, I think looking past just a solid resume is also important when you look into giving like youth members these opportunities, because especially with kids who have very diverse interests outside of school and they don't necessarily have leadership experience or professional experience in it, but they want to develop that professional experience and they want to develop that leadership experience in that field. And that's kind of the reason that they're applying to that program or that internship. I think it's important to try and get their perspective on it and get to know them. And I do understand that a minimum set of qualifications, such as like writing, organization skills, are important. And that is something that I think a resume is important for. But I think in addition to that, it's important to actually get to know that person and see, okay, even if they don't have professional experience in this field, is this something that they want to learn? Is this why they're applying? I think that's extremely important. And then another story I wanted to share was how I personally feel like as a young woman, whenever situations and conflict arises in activities or clubs or even jobs that I'm interested in, I feel more inclined to sort of walk away from it, even if I'm not directly involved in it. A key example of this in my life was my freshman year of high school. I was involved in mock trial because it was something I really, really enjoyed, as I want to pursue a career in law and advocacy and stuff like that. Like I actually felt like I got the opportunity to speak up for people. But within the first week of being on the team, the older male captain basically said to me, you know, you're just a pretty face, like you can't do anything. And in that moment, as a freshman, I was probably 13, 14, just starting out, trying to figure out everything. Like that hit me extremely hard. And what made it worse was, even though it was just one comment, that comment perpetuated negative attitudes towards me throughout the team, because I believe there was only one or two women on the whole team. It was mainly men. And I had just assumed, you know, I would just brush it off. This is an activity I enjoy, and I wanted to stick to my ideals and continue it and not let the opinion of one person sort of sway me one way or the other. But unfortunately, this negative attitude perpetuated. And I just remember feeling after every single tournament coming home and just crying to my parents about how literally the other teams from other schools would support me, but my actual team wouldn't support me because they kept saying these types of comments. And so eventually I realized for my own mental health and my sanity, I had to walk away from it. But walking away from that activity was honestly one of the hardest things I've ever done, because I have never felt more passionate about an activity or just advocating. I knew in that moment that, you know, law school and doing something like that was what I wanted to pursue, but it was just really hard because I knew that I couldn't be a part of this specific team. So that's like a key example of, I feel like, how, you know, like we feel like we have to walk away even when it's not our fault, even when people talk against us. And this even happened to me in college as well. Last semester, I had a similar situation with the fashion club I was involved in. Someone started a horrible rumor about me that obviously wasn't true, involving another male person in the club. And everyone was quickly inclined to believe that rumor instead of coming to me and asking me. Because if I had gotten the opportunity to explain myself and tell them, I would. I would say, you know, come to me. I'm an open book. I will explain everything with integrity. None of this stuff is true. And this is my actual personality, not what these people are saying. But unfortunately, I wasn't given that opportunity. And I realized that because I wasn't given that opportunity, this wasn't an organization I wanted to be a part of. But it also goes back to the idea of, I love doing activities. I love giving back to the community because this club is also very big on sustainability. And initially, that's why I wanted to get involved, so I could have some sort of a leadership role in sustainability and, you know, like help people out on campus. But unfortunately, I had to step away. So I guess my question for you guys is, how do you deal with these situations when it's something you are extremely passionate about, but the people around you just keep perpetuating this negative ideal around you, especially if you're a woman? That's something that I would love to learn more about, and just like hear your insight on that after your guys' like numerous years of experience. And then last, I just kind of wanted to touch on the idea of empathy. I was raised by my parents to always approach situations and conflicts with empathy, especially in situations like this where it's specific people who are going out of their way to harm me or to harm my reputation. The first thing I always try and do is consider their background. What is their family situation? How are they raised? Are they acting a certain way because of something that happened to them? Because I know in my heart that I haven't done anything wrong. And they may see it as something else. And so I want to understand why they feel that way and then sort of get to the root cause of that and then use that to find a solution. Because I think just flat out confronting someone that's not useful, like that's not going to sort of lead to any solution. It's just going to make the problem worse because then you get stuck in this negative cycle and you go back and forth, just trying to place blame. But I think what's more successful and what makes the situation better is actually understanding why they're acting that way and then like determining the root causes of that. So I just wanted to share a little bit about me and my youth voice. So I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you for listening. And I will share all of my contact info in the chat if you would like to do a follow up or if you have any questions or anything. Thank you again.
Yeah, when Keerthana says that she would like to meet more people and isn't sure, I just took her to an Asian leadership entrepreneurship event. This woman out networked me, so don't let her. Oh my gosh, she got everybody's contact info, immediately followed up. They welcomed her. It was really, really wonderful. So I want to open up to all of you kind of what your thoughts are. I mean, so if the idea is that we've got to not only make change now within our own generations, and I know Stephanie, you're of the same generation of Keerthana, but what can we do? You know, I've had discussions with friends where it's different being an ally than it is being an accomplice. Like an accomplice is like you're actually affecting change. And I've done mentoring programs where it's not like, let's just get together for coffee. Do we even have time for that? As I shared earlier on the UN numbers, you know, if it's going to take 130 years or 300 years or whatever for equity, how do we reach back and catapult forward? So I just want to open it up. Wendy, Liz, Stephanie, Katie's now joined us. Hello, Katie. Allie is still on. And Allie, feel free to go because I know we're running out of time with you, but you're having difficult conversations, you know, on climate change and a climate campaign in, you know, a unique community, as many are. What would your thoughts be?
Thanks, Rhonda. Yes, the challenges and the struggles are real, but what you just said at the beginning of our conversation of developing around community, having conversations, creating that sense of hope and empowerment within individuals to make a change just resonates with me so much. And so that's where I'm trying to focus our work, although influencing decision makers is huge. So that's why I'm hopping off this for a legislative discussion and working within the avenues that we have to influence those decision makers, but their grandparents too, their parents, they want to see their kids have a happy, healthy planet. So stories that resonate with them, understanding, you know, this isn't a partisan issue. How can we just make the world a better place for our kiddos? And I think we do that through stories and community, as you said.
So let me throw it open to the questions that Keerthana was asking us. What would you share, or just riff on whatever came up for you?
Well, I'll go. But first of all, Keerthana, thank you for sharing. Stephanie, I don't know. I would love to get your opinion as well on her experience. I'm sorry that had to happen to you at 13 or 14. That's so brutal. And it tells me that the culture of the school is not probably where you would have liked it to have been. Because if that's happening time and time again, the adults aren't paying attention, or they're not being told, or they're not aware, or a combination of all three. So it's unfortunate. I would say two things. One, regarding the rumor mongering and stuff like that. That is a tough one. I'll leave that to others because I am still noodling that and thinking about how I would, if I were in your shoes, how I would best handle that, because you certainly want to obviously defend yourself. But as you said, you could get into this whole vicious back and forth. It's just not worth the time. So I would say, I think you're beginning to tease out that you're looking for organizations that match your values. And if you don't find those organizations, I think it's wise of you to leave. If you don't see it getting better, wise of you to leave, because your time is so precious. You're only in college for X amount of years or X amount of time, still trying to, this is your time to figure it out and try stuff on. You're trying on different outfits, right? Does this one fit? Do I like this one? Literally, figuratively, and passionate and not. And I would say there's so many organizations, maybe not in your direct area, but certainly around the globe, that I would just try and find somewhere else that matches your values. That's that would be my advice there. But it's tough though, because you only have so many that are in your direct area that you're trying to find, and it depends on where you live. So yeah, I would just that would be my very tentative advice for now. Yeah, Stephanie, I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Wendy. Well, thank you for sharing. And I'm sorry that was your experience. I know it's a common experience. And honestly, I think any room that we step into as women, when we don't feel that, it's because a lot of women paved the way and, faced the brunt of that adversity and made it easier for us. So I think we all have that to recognize. And I'm just kind of beginning to experience that. And I've been lucky that in sustainability and communications, they've both generally been fields where it was predominantly women. And so I've mostly dealt with the whole boys club situation a bit since being in, my role at a company, like at Neighborhood Sun specifically. I'm very lucky. We have a super diverse team. Most of the team that I deal with directly, is women. And so it's very supportive, but I do recognize that there are other groups within the company, and you still do face those issues. And like Wendy said, I think sometimes it's about choosing your battles, because you don't owe it to everyone to fix the system, and you need to decide when it is within your capacity and when it's just an uphill battle that isn't wise to spend your time on. So I would say if you can't join them, try to find a way to beat them, or start your own organization of women supporting each other, or just people who are willing to foster a different culture, because I'm sure if you've experienced that, there have been other people who have experienced it too. So, with the theme of this entire webinar, like Rhonda was saying, just seek out that community who has the same interests and values as you do, and try to lead by example. I know easier said than done. And with the other situation about the rumor, I really don't know what to say. That's so unfortunate, and it's tough when you can't control things like rumors and what people are saying about you, and who you are and that you didn't do that, and the people who stand by you will be the people to lean on, and the other ones shouldn't matter. But it's really hard in college and when you're surrounded by people like that to not let situations get the best of you. But it seems like you're really powering through, and I applaud you for that, rising above. And as far as empathy, I really think it's a superpower, and as women, it's very underrated. Like, I was just in a meeting the other day where a man got kind of called out, very loosely for just he not even got called out for not doing his job, but a woman presented her work that I think made him feel insecure, like he didn't do a good enough job. And then the whole meeting was about kind of like coddling his feelings. And afterwards, I just talked to a woman who was in the meeting, and we were laughing, like, if a woman had been in that situation, she would have immediately been apologizing and just like swallowed those feelings and risen above, because we're so used to having to do that. And he clearly just could not handle his feelings, and his ego couldn't take it. And I really think it is a superpower to be able to get through those situations unscathed and rise above, because 9 times out of 10 it'll serve you a lot more than picking a fight or making a fuss. So that's my big takeaway.
Big story. Liz, do you have some thoughts on that? Because I know, speaking to the women in medicine and science at the U of A and elsewhere, that they've talked about and these women have so many degrees and titles, and I'm like, they're
Right.
just like, how do we talk to the dean? And this is former. How do we talk to the dean? How do we get the 60 minutes? How do we pitch our,
Right.
our project that we're working on? So what are your thoughts?
I have two thoughts. And first of all, thank you for sharing with this. I think it's such a, like, it's so mature and so great of you to say, okay, I want to share this and I want to get feedback and I want to just, talk about it, because without talking about it and getting and having community, nothing's going to happen. So I want to I'll talk about College of Medicine, but I was in a leadership cohort, I guess you would say, from Estee Lauder Vital Voices. It's based out of DC. And Estee Lauder gave them money to do this wonderful training program for leaders all over the world. So it's women leaders all over. And so I was one of them. I was very grateful to get accepted into this group. And I only talk about this because there was women from India, Pakistan, literally, I was one of two people from the States that talked about the same thing about dealing with male, situations where they just couldn't move forward. And so it was all about women in community and finding women in their community they could work with. And also finding, and I think this is a really important thing, and I think this goes to College of Medicine, the College of Medicine, finding men who are advocates of women being leaders. And there's honestly not a whole lot sometimes, and you really got to find them. But I would say to you to go after those types of men. You'll get a sense of them when you talk to them. And so I think going to where I work now, medicine used to be a male dominated field. It is not anymore. The classes are half women, half men. More women now, actually, in our class, our first year class. But it is finding their voice. So we have this group called Women in Medicine and Science, and they are loud in a good way about what they want to do and why they want to get promoted, and they want to be published, and they want to do everything that men do in this field of science and medicine. And so that's their community, Women in Medicine and Science, WIMS. And so there's men that go to these meetings with them, and they are advocate for women in the space. So that would be and I would look at that Vital Voices. I could put the email, I could put the website in there. They have this great leadership program that I've really enjoyed. It was only like 6 months, and it was just meeting women from all over the globe. So it was really cool.
I had a
great
follow-up
example.
question to that, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So how do you be loud for situations that you care about without coming off as
I know,
too
yeah.
much? Or like having like that feminine rage,
Yeah. It's a great. Does anyone else want to answer that? Rhonda?
Well, I mean, Keerthana and I have talked a little bit leading up to this, and and I guess I think one of the opportunities is whether you're sitting in a meeting and you're having to allay some man's emotional situation. Everyone goes off and talks about it. So without being confrontational, I wonder if there is a way to go direct. I mean, doesn't Brene Brown say clear as kind? So I do wonder if Keerthana went into her group and said, and I'd love to hear what everyone thinks, because I've done some direct addressing issues as well, situations as well, where she went and said, I understand that some people are talking about some things and there may be some misinformation here, and I am open and ready to clear the air if anyone's got any questions. So instead of waiting, for somebody to ask her, what prevents us from us going forward doing it in a tone where you're open and welcoming? Because if she ends up walking away no matter what, isn't it better that we sort of work that muscle to sort of address it? Now in Stephanie's situation, I think is interesting. I'm not sure how you do that sort of in a circle, but I mean, everybody's thought bubbles were probably saying, and then nobody's saying it. So it's like, I do wonder if there's a leader in the room who can say, or even somebody else, it's like, We're all probably feeling very uncomfortable. And the fact of the matter is everyone contributes different kinds of work. Sometimes everyone's work is better, sometimes it's not. But we're here as a team to accomplish these things. I wonder if there's a way that we can just kind of like, what is it that's going to move this project, this company, this initiative forward?
Yeah, I agree. Just finding that common ground and seeing how you contribute to it and making that clear in, not a defensive way or an aggressive way, but just matter of factly. And that's something that's so hard to do. And my dad always talks about Ruth Bader Ginsburg and the way, because I get really heated sometimes when I talk about environmental issues. And I've learned obviously and tried very hard to internalize and put that into practice, but just knowing that being louder doesn't get your argument across better, and it really is the person who speaks sometimes the least and most concisely and most quietly and matter of factly, looking for no validation at all, that wields the most power in the room. And I think that's how, as like minorities, you kind of get a leg up on the competition by just showing that you can compete and you can do it without needing to let your ego get in the way of progress. And that's an asset that you have over the men in the room, again, because of your ability to empathize. And also when you go about trying to persuade someone to put you in a certain position or just advocating for yourself, you have a more concise ability to read what people want and how they need to be spoken to. And that's going to get you a lot further than just treating everyone the same. And that's another, skill that comes with empathy. So I would just really lean into that as much as you can.
I want to throw it to Katie, and I love what you said, Stephanie, and I want to frame it. When people take on Greta Thunberg, they talk about her being, an angry young woman. They don't take on the issues that she's talking about. They attack the female, the young, the angry. And so really, while it feels like we're giving advice to Keerthana, we actually all need to think about how we show up, because going back to the idea of accomplice versus an ally. So I want to ask Katie, because I know a little bit about Forest Park Conservancy. Katie, I don't know how long you've been there, but what I do know that is very unique and special about Forest Park is that you work with multicultural young volunteers, and you really do great work around community building. Is there anything that you would offer around that to this discussion?
Yeah, this has been a really, thank you for letting me mostly listen in so far. And one thing that resonated with me was when you said, Stephanie, that oftentimes the person who doesn't speak the loudest is the one whose message is the most compelling, or the one that's listening makes a huge effort. And in fundraising, something that makes somebody an effective fundraiser, I think personally, is being a good listener. And something that we've been talking about as an organization has been that sometimes that like loudest voice in the room, like that's a patriarchal norm, that is like the most powerful person. And even as women, we feel like we need to adopt that strategy to succeed, but that's not an effective way to move forward. So going to what you're saying, Rhonda, about working with we have a workforce development program that is specifically focused on training BIPOC youth being folks under the age of 26 to build a career in the conservation sector. And it's been a hugely valuable program to our organization, which has been around for 30 years and is a historically white-led organization. And so ensuring that the participants in that program feel a part of the team and able to share their perspective has been really valuable, and oftentimes has led to our organization like needing to pause and open up questions, sort of in that like roundtable style. And that's pretty new for us to be able to open up questions on like strategies of our work, like how, like huge questions, something that's the organization has done for decades is being questioned by somebody who's a new like intern, for example. And so being able to listen to everybody's perspective, and as an organization know that like we're rooted in our cultural history and what we think is the best way to address a problem. Just being able to like sit back and take a pause where we all have an opportunity to share and understand that just because somebody's the loudest in the room doesn't mean it's, and that we've been doing it forever doesn't mean it's the best way to go. So yeah, we're sort of in the thick of all of what you've all been talking about. And so this is really, really nice to be in community with you all about it.
Are we on the right track?
I think so. Yeah, we're sort of like right at a sticky point. So like, yeah, for example, there's we have always like removed invasive species from the park, and now we have 2 Indigenous staff who have shared that they like would prefer a different strategy than removing the plants. So and that's something we've done forever, like as a nonprofit, that's something we've done since the beginning. And so and there's the 2 voices, like one person is female and more but her approach is more educational, and the other approach is more like intense and like we're going to stop doing this immediately. And it's just really interesting to see how those 2 approaches are perceived and by the rest of the staff. So yeah, we're like literally in the middle of it right now. So
Wendy, do you have any additional thoughts or questions even for us?
I do. I am so grateful that I work at Apple because there is a constant learning cycle. We have something internal called Apple University, and it's public knowledge. It's not a private thing. And they constantly put on classes. And so I'm in a class now that talks about 1 + 1 = 3, something Tim said in a public meeting around sharing your ideas with one person, and they not only double, but then you said it share with another person, they triple, and kind of like the idea of this sharing of your idea with someone and getting it out there, because that's how ideas and that's how things get created and made. But there is also a very common term around here called fearless feedback. So I agree with, I can't remember who said it, Liz, Stephanie. It is important to give feedback in a way that feels constructive. And, I don't want you to be so empathic that you take on the issue of whatever's happening in front of you because you're trying to understand where they're coming from. There is a point where it is affecting you and you need to provide that feedback in a way that this is how I'm feeling, or this is, whatever your choice of words are here. But, and you can even say in the spirit of fearless feedback, here's what, if it's an individual that you're struggling with. So I would encourage that because we are a very conflict diverse society in general, and particularly at work, because you don't want to be seen as the difficult person, or I don't know. Sometimes, unfortunately, youth get painted with, they're go-getters and they're stepping out of their lane, right? So that's another thing that unfortunately is a stereotype for young people, because you are so excited about learning. You just want to suck it all up. I remember I worked at pets.com, which some of you may remember was the online poster child also for the .com boom, because it just went up in flames. Anyway, I worked there, and I was totally new to this kind of producing, this online store producing. I really didn't know. There were a couple other producers that were amazing. And I would ask to sit in one of those other producers' meeting just so I could learn and sit. And at one point she turned around and she goes, well, why do you want to sit in my meetings? She got defensive. She's like, are you trying to, I don't know what it was. And I realized I'd overstepped my bounds. So just be aware of where leaning in and having people help you and learn is appropriate. And I shouldn't have been in her meetings. I could have learned some of that from my manager, or I just assumed that she would be okay with that. I don't think I actually asked her if that was a cool thing until she, confronted me about it. So a lot of this is learning workplace culture, and really You're only going to learn that until you get in. So when you guys are interviewing for your next jobs or where you're going to end up being, ask deep questions about workplace culture with everyone you can interview with. And hopefully it's more than 4 people, because those 4 people have been chosen to interview for a specific role, but hopefully there's people around them and you get a little bit more sense of what's really happening. Watch their faces, watch their body language. They're not going to come out and say, oh, I'm really struggling. You'll see it though, they'll talk around it a little bit. So pay attention to those kinds of things when you're interviewing. um, and just really look into, like, Rhonda and I met through Seth Godin. I would read everything he writes. I would follow his blog. I would listen to every podcast because he's an expert in creating culture that works, regardless of gender or, he really is about building up community. I'll never forget it. I mean, it really was the best thing I've ever done, was getting into one of his workshops. Highly recommend that.
Thank you so much.
I've got something kind of piggybacking off of the whole workplace culture and fearless feedback. I love that term. Thank you for introducing me to that. I'm currently, my reviews are due today, like my employee reviews, and I've had all month to do them. And I have had a draft sitting there and I keep going back to it. And I'm like, how honest do I want to be? How, real do I want to be? Like, is this going to accomplish anything? Am I putting a target on my back? Where is that line? Is it going to help anything? I'm not really afraid to voice my complaints, but I'm just wondering if it's constructive. And so I'm curious about any input regarding that.
Well, I think you're asking all the right questions, right? Is this going to accomplish anything? Is this really a problem that's going to continue if I don't say something? I always, when I'm writing out employee reviews, I kind of run them by my husband. He's such a good writer and he's so great about his concise thoughts. So if there's someone that you trust that's not in your circle that could read what you're writing, and they might say, well, what exactly you're trying to say here? Or this feels a little personal and not like within the bounds of work. But that's an excellent question to ask. I'd be curious to know, Liz or Katie, what you have to say about that.
And if no one has any other input on that, like a similar, anecdote is, I was working on our diversity survey. We did a Justity, Equity, Inclusion, Diversity survey, and I did like kind of a ranking system on a number of statements and how true they feel to you. And one of them that I included, back to the whole, feminism aspect of things, was about tasks being shared equally within the workplace, divided by gender, like extraneous kind of office tasks like planning the holiday party, taking notes during a meeting, things like that, and whether it felt like those were evenly distributed, because that was something that was raised to me by a coworker, and I've never seen that really brought up in the workplace, and it felt like this feels like a good conversation for that. So
Yeah, that's a great thought, because those roles are ingrained, I think, in I'll just speak for myself. I mean, I feel like they're, women do this and men do that, and then never do the two shall. That's, but I think that is a great point, where why should women plan parties and take notes and clean the fridge
for
and
no additional reward,
yeah. And is it just because we have these preconceived notions of what men and women should be doing? And there's no conversation about it. At least
right.
This is my experience. And so yes, let's have a conversation about that. That's a great thought. Yeah, great action item.
Liz, you just made me think. We're wondering about men, but we do preconceived things. Like, why do we automatically do the X, Y, and Z instead of questioning?
Right.
We know it needs to get done, and we're used to men not doing it.
Right.
So that's just how that goes. Rhonda, I think it comes back to the invisible burden again of, like, on women, just of knowing what needs to happen. And it's kind of like, roommates in a house, it's whoever wants it to be clean the most, whoever cares the most is the one who's going to clean the most. And that's, I think women just end up being that, like filling that role in most aspects in life. And that's why we're superheroes.
But isn't that maddening, right? That the house should be cleaned by
It
one person who wants it to be clean. It's the same thing at work though, right? You're seeing a need in some volunteer organization, and yet it's filled by all women who are doing this extra work on top of their already busy jobs. And there should be a conversation about this is not right, or it doesn't happen. But that's a, I don't know to what extent you can say, I'm not going to participate unless I see 50% equity of men in there.
Mhm.
I'm curious if they even see it, and yet as a mom, I wonder if we raise them to not see it. But so I have a daughter and a son, and I was raised with two sisters, so I've never seen the boy thing, and I was really excited to have it. And they were only 1 year apart, so it was really fascinating. And just watching my daughter make lunch for my son, and I said, she's about to graduate, and you're going to be all on your own, and I'm not making you lunch, so you need to like figure this out. And it was just really interesting to see that dynamic. But he's been able to fly. I mean, it's been bumpy, but he's figured it out pretty quickly.
But to the point though, when men and women get into the workplace, they take all of that history and family and how they were raised and they bring it into the workplace. And then there's people that just go along with it, would never say anything. So it's just a great conversation.
Kudos to you for
Well,
even bringing it up on the survey. I think that's fantastic, because if that gets put in front of everyone, now it's in the room, right?
thank
That's a
you.
discussion point.
Well, I'm lucky that, my coworker brought it up, because I wouldn't have thought to put it on the survey either. And she really does carry the office in so many ways. So it's just like, if it's happening, let's talk about it, and then let's reward it at least. But yeah, not talking about it just breeds this, expectation. So, but Rhonda, thank you so much. I've got another meeting, but thank you so much for making the space for us all to come here. And I really appreciated hearing everyone's input, and I loved the question and everyone's feedback. So thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to do that and thank everybody, and I appreciate you joining us. And here's another way to get in touch with Keerthana and connect in. And when you think of her, think of everybody else around you, other young women that we can be supportive of. And are there any final thoughts from you, Keerthana, or anyone else?
Yeah,
I
thank
just
you
wanted
for
to say,
sharing, Keerthana, too.
oh,
Really
sorry.
appreciate you.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to say thank you so much. Stephanie, you came up with, you brought up some really, really insightful points, stuff that I haven't even thought of because I'm not in the workplace yet, but it's like stuff that I want to be thinking about when I start going through that process. And then everyone else, thank you so, so much. You all are incredibly accomplished and successful women. So I thank you so much for your 1 hour and all of the insightful advice you guys gave.
All right, so thank you, Keerthana. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. What I would say to the rest of you who are still on or listening, if you have other names of people that you would like to have join us, just as a guest and or potentially a speaker, something topic that you would like to dig into, I welcome that and invite that. You can connect with me either at my email at rhonda@earthgives or connect@earthgives. And we're just thrilled to see you and be in community and find the courage and lots of wisdom. I was scribbling notes, so it was really great to see all of you. And hopefully your 2023 is off to a good start.